Thanks to all your support, I'm officially a full-time YouTuber, so we're going to celebrate right here with a live stream at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on my YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. And now, on with our feature presentation. October 3rd, 1976. It's week 4 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely big game on our hands over in Foxborough, between the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots. This feels like not just the biggest game of the entire week of the 14 games on the NFL calendar, but this feels like the biggest game of the entire season thus far, as you had two of the best teams in football early on battling it out. In one corner, you had the New England Patriots, who were sitting atop the AFC East alongside the Baltimore Colts and the Miami Dolphins with a 2-1 record, and were looking to win this game to keep pace of the division hunt, and keep their hopes alive at winning their division and making the playoffs for the first time since all the way back in 1963, well before the merger even happened. And in the other corner, you had the Oakland Raiders, who were in a pretty similar position, as even though they were off to a great start, having started 3-0 following 3 wins by a combined 7 points, they were also tied atop their division with the San Diego Chargers, so they needed this one to keep pace and hold on to their lead. In other words, while this wasn't a must-win, as both teams are in very good spots, whoever wins this game really positions themselves nicely for a playoff push nearly 1/3 of the way through the year. And what we got on the field was absolutely shocking. It was a result that no one, not even the most optimistic Patriots fan in the world, could have ever seen coming. Even if you thought that the Patriots, as 7-point underdogs, were going to pull off the upset and win this game, you could not have possibly seen just how much they'd win by. Because when the final whistle sounded, in an absolute massacre, the Patriots won by a final score of 48-17. The Patriots played a near flawless game of football, taking it to the Raiders in ways that not many teams had ever done before. They dominated on the ground, picking up an astonishingly high 296 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on 5.7 yards per carry. This was an Oakland team that the previous week, in their victory over the Houston Oilers, gave up just 79 rushing yards on 2.4 yards per carry. And here was New England, just destroying them on the ground. New England forced 4 turnovers, and forced a ton of pressure, as Oakland's quarterbacks, whether they were Ken Stabler or Mike Ray, took a beating, as combined, they got sacked 4 times. Meanwhile, the Patriots never got sacked. And second-year quarterback Steve Grogan had arguably the best game of his young career thus far, as he completed a career-high 71% of his passes for a career-high 3 touchdowns and a career-high passer rating of 120.5. As a side note, if you want to learn more about the career of Steve Grogan and just how good he was for the Pats, click the card in the upper right corner. The game was so bad that it legitimately left the Raiders shell-shocked, and I do not say that lightly. Head coach John Madden, one of the all-time greats and legends of the game, said afterwards, "No one has ever done this to one of my teams." Even the always outspoken Al Davis was left speechless, saying, "We respected their offense, and I never say things like that. But we never expected anything like this to happen." And the win, and the manner in which the Patriots won, was so shocking that owner Billy Sullivan said, "I think that this may have been the biggest game in the history of our franchise, because we did such an amazing job on the field." But as crazy and as unpredictable as the drama for this game was on the field, off the field, from a broadcasting perspective, it might have been even crazier. Because in the build-up to the game, there was serious talk about who would even be able to watch this game in the first place. Thanks to a whole host of issues, from a newspaper backing out of their promise and obligation, to team officials not knowing what they were doing, to the issue being so controversial that it literally got taken up in front of Congress, there were serious doubts and discussions about whether or not Boston would be able to watch this game unfold live in front of them on their television sets. It's a crazy situation, and it's one that deserves a deep dive today. Because this is the story behind what has to be, considering the circumstances, the craziest broadcasting controversy in the over 60-year history of the New England Patriots franchise. Before I talk about the giant controversy in question and what decision the Patriots came to in the end, we need some context to understand how the blackout rules worked back in 1976, and how this applied to the Patriots-Raiders game. After blackouts applied for all home games regardless of whether or not they sold out, after the 1972 season, the rules were changed, thanks in part to uproar from Congress and the passage of a law, and allowed for home games to be televised in their respective markets. Quite simply, a team had to sell out its entire stadium within a certain time frame in order for the game to be televised locally. Usually, this was within 72 hours of kickoff, although this deadline was flexible and could be adjusted accordingly. Now, the Patriots were not exactly having the best of starts drawing crowds thus far in 1976. They played at a stadium which held somewhere in the ballpark of 60,000 spectators, and each of their first two games got blacked out, with Game 1, a 27-13 loss against the Baltimore Colts, failing to sell out after drawing just 43,512 fans, and Game 2, a 30-14 win against the Miami Dolphins, failing to sell out after drawing just 46,053 fans. It makes sense as to why the Pats had trouble selling out early on. They were coming off of a 3-11 season, and they hadn't had a winning record since 1966. And especially while the weather was still good there, people were hesitant to spend their money on driving all the way out to the suburbs to watch a lousy football team play. However, once the Patriots beat two of the most formidable opponents on a yearly basis in the AFC in back-to-back weeks, beating Miami and Pittsburgh, all of that changed, as for the first time thus far, there was a genuine belief that this game against the Raiders, considering the circumstances surrounding it, had a chance to sell out. It wasn't a guarantee by any means. They needed to sell roughly 6,500 tickets in 1.5 days to lift the blackout. But by no means was it impossible. Now, the bad news for the Patriots was that, unfortunately, 6,500 tickets is a lot of tickets. That's well over 10% of the stadium that they would have to fill in 24 hours. And that's a tall order for any team, let alone a team that had 5 of their games get blacked out the previous year and had 2 home games blacked out in 2 tries thus far. And unfortunately, they could not sell all 6,500 tickets, as when the day ended, the calculations said that there were still some tickets remaining. However, the good news was that this number was awfully close, as on the night of Wednesday, September 29th, they only had 750 tickets left. That's it. The Pats went from 6,500 tickets left to 750 tickets left in the span of a day. The job wasn't done, but all they had to do now was sell 750 tickets before Thursday at 1 o'clock, and they'd be golden, and the home game would be televised in Boston for the first time all year. And even better for the Pats was that the Boston Globe offered to buy up 500 tickets in order to lift the blackout. So in actuality, New England only had to sell 250 more tickets. You saw a lot of publications, people, and companies do this, where if the number is close, they'd buy up the remaining tickets to the game to avoid the game getting blacked out, in order to get goodwill, or in the case of a newspaper, get more eyeballs on the game so that people would be more likely to buy the paper the next day and read the post-game quotes and analysis from the game. Perhaps the most famous example of a company doing this, or infamous example depending on how you want to look at it, was in 2002, when the supermarket chain Winn-Dixie bought literally every unsold Jaguars ticket to prevent games that season from being blacked out. But that was what the Boston Globe was doing here. Because the number was so low, they'd be willing to buy 500 tickets to lift the blackout. In other words, barring anything crazy, like I don't know, the Patriots officials not knowing how to do their job, it was a guarantee that the blackout would be lifted. Take a wild guess as to what happens next. Because as it turned out, the Patriots made a bit of an oopsie-daisy. Just a teeny tiny miscalculation and accounting error. Because just as everyone in the Boston area was getting excited to watch their Patriots on television, the Patriots came out and said that their math was off, and that their statement was a lie. The Patriots didn't have 750 unsold tickets left. They had over 1,200 unsold tickets left, or 61% more than what they originally said. If I had a nickel for every time I did a video on a time in New England Patriots history that a home game had a massive ticketing controversy because Patriots officials were god-awful at their jobs, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. If you want to learn more about that, click the card in the upper right corner. Because as it turns out, the Patriots never actually counted how many tickets were left for this game. They just estimated. According to Pat Horn, the public relations chief for the Patriots, the number was nothing more than a ballpark amount. Seriously, a ballpark amount. A decision like this impacts advertisers, impacts the entire community, impacts the fan base, impacts the local NBC affiliate, because they have to figure out what game to air instead. And even though your ticket office literally has one job, which is to count how many tickets are left, you're just guessing on the number. Imagine if I said that a ticket to come on a cruise with me cost $750, and you said you could do it. And then I said, wait a second, you didn't actually believe that, did you? I was just guessing how much it would cost. It's more like $1,200. You'd be pretty ticked off, right? Especially if you did things in the lines of that statement on my end, like take off of work and try to figure out who could watch your pet for that time. That's a big deal. And yet, that's what the Patriots did here with this complete nonsense. Because now, not only was the Boston Globe not going to buy up the remaining tickets, because the Patriots just flat out lied to them, and because even by buying up 500 tickets, it wouldn't be enough to ensure a sellout, the Patriots decided that they were going to black the game out. New England could have lifted the blackout, but despite this mess that they created entirely by themselves, they opted not to do that. Pat Horn, who at this point felt as though he was in the running for one of the worst PR people in the league, with how bad and insulting these statements are, said on this, "We have done everything we could to cooperate in the selling of tickets and making the number remaining available to the media. That is everything except, actually counting the number of freaking tickets remaining." Horn continued, saying, "We are fully aware of the anti-blackout rule and are living up to its obligations. The club's policy in general has rested on a moral obligation to our cash customers." And President Billy Sullivan echoed those thoughts on not wanting to lift the blackout and screw over people who bought tickets to the game, saying, "We have a moral responsibility to the people who support the franchise. The stockholders, the season ticket holders, and those who bought single-game tickets for the Oakland game. I mean, you also have a moral responsibility to tell the truth and do your job. And I'd say that the Boston Globe was a pretty big supporter, seeing as they'd be willing to buy 500 tickets for you to get out of this mess. But hey, who am I to judge?" The Patriots refused to lift the blackout, even though, one day later, less than 200 tickets remain. Keep in mind that if the Pats' original number was accurate, seeing as 200 is way less than 461, which is 1,211, the actual number, minus 750, the reported number, that this would mean that the game would be sold out, and there would be no blackout. And the Pats' refusal and stubbornness to lift the blackout was such a big deal that it made it all the way to Congress. Louis Fry, a Republican from Florida, said that what the Patriots were doing by not lifting the blackout was not even remotely within the spirit of the blackout law, and that New England's error should not punish the public. It's like when a teacher hands you back your test, says that you got the answer wrong, when in actuality, you got it right. And upon showing the teacher that you got it right, and that they made a grading error, they say that they're not going to change it. However, Congress didn't do anything about this, as it recessed for the year. Just like that, the game was blacked out, entirely because of New England's own doing, and there was nothing that could be done about it. Or so you think. Because this story, as frustrating and as maddening as it is, has a happy ending. Because just hours before game time, Sullivan had a change of heart. And what happened then? Well, in Boston they say that Billy Sullivan's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. The blackout got lifted at the very last minute, with Sullivan saying, "In view of the intense interest throughout New England in this game, and in gratitude for the strong support which the fans of New England have given to our team, we have decided to proceed with the local televising. Seems like a complete 180 over what you just said the day before, which was that televising the game would screw over those who actually support the team, but it doesn't matter how you got there. Just that you got there and made the right call. And this meant that all across Boston, if you were a Patriots fan, whether you were at the stadium, in your home, or at the bar, you could watch the Pats dominate and win by 31 points. So you got your happy ending. Today, the blackout policy no longer exists, but for roughly 40 years, fans had to deal with worrying about whether or not games would sell out and be shown locally. And perhaps no blackout situation was crazier and more frustrating than this one. Because if there was ever a clear-cut example of highlighting the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, this was it. Because on this October day in 1976, not only did the Patriots get a massive win on the field, but they got a massive win off of it by doing the right thing and televising the game. Even if it never should have come to that point in the first place. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.